All right, hello and welcome. If you're working in the Guidewire PolicyCenter world, you know that managing risk is, well, it's the whole game. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal for doing just that, underwriting rules. So, let's get right to it.
So let's start with the fundamental challenge that every single insurer on the planet faces. How do you take all that underwriting wisdom, decades of experience, all those complex if this then that scenarios, and apply it instantly, consistently across thousands, maybe millions of policies? The real question is, how do you scale that intelligence without your headcount going through the roof? Because let's be real for a second. When you leave every decision up to a manual review, you're going to get inconsistency. It's just human nature. One underwriter might approve something that another one would flag in a heartbeat. And that doesn't just open you up to a ton of risk, it creates these massive bottlenecks. It just slows everything down, frustrating agents and customers alike.
And that, right there, is where PolicyCenter's solution comes in. We're talking about the system's underwriting rules, or UW rules. I want you to think of them as the automated gatekeeper for the entire policy lifecycle. They are literally the digital version of your company's risk appetite.
Okay, so let's get a really clear definition on the table. A UW rule is, at its heart, a pretty simple concept. It's an automated business rule. It just looks at the policy data, anything from a driver's age to a building's fire protection, and it compares that data to the criteria you've set up. And based on that comparison, it enforces your underwriting guidelines. The two magic words here are automated and consistently.
And don't make the mistake of thinking these are just gentle suggestions. Oh no, UIW rules have real teeth. A rule can be a hard stop, a total showstopper, blocking a quote or a bind from moving forward at all. Or it can be a little softer, raising an issue and saying, hey, a human needs to take a look at this one. On the flip side, it can give the green light, automatically approving low-risk stuff for true straight-through processing. Or it can put a policy in a holding pattern, preventing it from being issued until specific things are sorted out.
So, if you really want to master these rules, you've got to understand how they're built. And it's not some kind of black box, I promise. Every single rule has a really clear and logical anatomy. So, let's pop the hood and take a look.
Deep down, under all the business logic, it all starts in the data model. The definition for every single rule, its logic, its actions, the whole shebang, it lives right here in the UW rule entity. This is the absolute foundational building block of the whole system. I absolutely love this analogy. Just think of a UW rule as a smart checklist. It has three basic parts. First up, you've got the applicability criteria. This just asks which policies should even get this checklist. It's a filter, right? Maybe this rule only applies to commercial property in Florida. Simple. Next, you have the rule condition. This is the specific item on that checklist. It's your if statement. If the building is more than 50 years old. And finally, you have the rule action. This is the consequence, the then statement. Then raise an issue for underwriter review. See? It's just a simple but incredibly powerful three-part structure. And for you tech folks out there who want to know exactly how that first step works, well, that applicability filter is handled by a specific GOSU class. The system uses the UWR rule applicability criteria predicate class to do that first cut, making sure that rules are only ever evaluated when they're actually relevant to the policy you're working on. Okay, so we know what a rule is, we know how it's structured. The next logical question has to be when. When does the system actually run all this logic? So let's take a look at the key moments, the triggering points in the policy lifecycle.
Now, the rules engine isn't just running constantly in the background. That would be chaos. No, it's way smarter than that. It gets called into action at very specific, very critical moments, when a brand new submission gets created, or when someone wants to make a midterm policy change, when a renewal job kicks off automatically, or even during a rewrite or cancellation. These are the checkpoints where PolicyCenter basically pauses, takes a breath, and runs its risk evaluation.
And again, for the developers in the room, there's a really clean technical mechanism behind all this. Any transaction that needs to kick off the rules engine simply implements the triggering point interface. That's it. It's how the system is designed to know precisely when to call on that rulebook for an evaluation. Okay, let's switch gears a little. We've covered the what and the when, now let's talk about the how. Because look, knowing how rules work is one thing, but effectively managing a library of hundreds or even thousands of them, that is a whole different ballgame. So let's look at some absolutely crucial best practices straight from Guidewire's own guides.
This first one seems almost trivial, right? Kind of boring even. But I guarantee you, this has bitten so many development teams. The official advice is simple. Watch out for long rule names.
And here's the why behind that advice. Guidewire actually stores each rule in its own file, and it's nested in a directory structure. So if you have really long rule names and a deep hierarchy of rules, the full path to that file can actually get longer than the character limit for the operating system, like Windows. And that leads to these mysterious deployment failures that are a huge pain to track down.
Now, this next one is a piece of advice I absolutely love, because it's not about code, it's about governance. Guidewire recommends you appoint a rules librarian. And no, this doesn't have to be a full-time job, but it should be a designated role for one person, or maybe a small group.
And the reason this is so critical is that without a librarian, your rulebook just descends into chaos. Different teams start using different naming conventions, and pretty soon it's impossible to find anything, let alone debug or maintain your rules over the long haul. This role enforces consistency, and consistency is the secret to a rule set that can actually scale and be managed for years to come. So what does that consistency look like in the real world? Well, this slide lays out a few key principles. You should use prefixes to identify the line of business. PA for personal auto, CA for commercial auto. Create a logical numbering system for parent and child rules, just like you see in that example. And here's a pro tip. Always include the rule's display name in the action message itself. That way, when an underwriter sees a flag, they know instantly which rule triggered it without having to go look it up.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. We've seen how powerful and absolutely essential these automated rules are. They handle the routine work, they enforce consistency, they make straight-through processing possible. So as these systems get smarter and smarter and they start handling more of the load, what does that mean for the role of the human underwriter? What is their new job? It's a huge question for the future of our industry, and definitely one worth thinking about. Thanks so much for joining me.